Namaste everyone. Welcome to this series on the contemplative arts and aesthetics of yoga. I am your host, Dr. Praveena Rodriguez. I am faculty at Star King School for the Ministry in Oakland, California, and postdoctoral fellow at the Jesuit School of Theology of Santa Clara University in Berkeley, California. I'm super excited to introduce today's speaker. We have with us world-renowned Vaishnava scholar, comparative theologian of religion, philosophy, and history of yoga and bhakti. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Graham Schweig. Dr. Schweig will be talking to us on the relationship between sacred sound, Saṃkīrtanā and Bhajana, and sacred visual art such as paintings of the Rāsa Maṇḍala to foreground how both, especially in combination, elicit prema shakti. Before we begin, a little bit about Dr. Schweig. Dr. Schweig is Director of Studies in Religion at Christopher Newport University, Virginia. Prior to joining Christopher Newport University, he was a teaching fellow at Harvard University, lecturer at University of North Carolina and Duke University, and while teaching at Christopher Newport University, he was for 2 years visiting associate professor of Sanskrit at the University of Virginia. He has been recognized several times for excellence in teaching, including the annual Alumni Faculty Award for Teaching and Mentoring. And he has been a regular invited lecturer at the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. for over 10 years. He has also given lectures widely in the US and in Europe. Dr. Schweig has over 100 published journal and encyclopedia articles, chapters of books and reviews of books, and several books, the most well-known of which is Bhagavad Gita, the Beloved Lord's Secret Love Song. Along with his teaching at Christopher Newport University, Dr. Schweig is also currently Distinguished Teaching and Research Faculty at the Graduate Theological Union's Center for Dharma Studies in Berkeley, California. Welcome again, Dr. Schweig.
Thank you so much for in your invitation for me to be able to make some little contribution to your project of contemplative arts and aesthetics of yoga. My thanks goes to Dr. Praveena Rodriguez for arranging this today, and also thank you, Dr. Rita Sharma, for creating this project. Wonderful project. A topic that's close to my heart. Okay, good. Okay, so I launched here somewhat of a careful look at kirtan, which everyone here, I'm sure, is aware of, is a very essential practice of bhakti, and especially of Krishna bhakti, and I'm trying to relate kirtan to the experience of its metaphysical vision of Achintya Bheda Bheda, particularly of the Chaitanya Vaiśnava school. And there's, just so anyone here would need to perhaps know that Achintya Bheda Bheda means what is unthinkable, what is inconceivable, what is, it just can't be comprehended. The simultaneous infinite otherness and unitive non-otherness of reality. Now, I know that's a heck of a way to start off a talk with such abstruse terms, but the idea is that there is a sense in which the bhakta feels totally embraced by all of reality, on the one hand, by the Bheda, by otherness. Otherness completely embraces the bhakta, and the bhakta reaches ever more for this supreme otherness, the supreme other, and at the same time, the bhakta experiences the unity and the repose of non-otherness and that completed embrace. So we'll come back to that theme as we move along. Okay, so kirtan. Kirtan has the two primary meanings from the root, the Sanskrit root, kirt, which means to praise, expressing the presence of the divine. So again, the sense of the abheda, the presence, the non-otherness, the direct vision of the divine, and yet the absence of the divine. To call out is the other meaning, to praise and to call out. And these two need each other. And the experience is that the more one praises, the more one feels not close enough to the beloved. And the more one feels not close enough to the beloved, one feels even a greater presence of the beloved. So this kind of dialectical experience is what is so acutely experienced and felt in kirtan. But let's examine this further. The practice of offering one's whole heart in devotional song, expressing intense longing for the divine, and at the same time expressing a poignant and powerful sense of belonging to the divine. So this sense of longing and belonging is sort of my major theme today. Okay, so kirtan is in some sense the return embrace of an all-embracing, loving divinity. Now, what I'd like to do is move into an aspect of the theological vision that kirtan is in direct relation to. So, for example, kirtan celebrates the divine in its most intimate, eternal moments, the supremely beautiful, the supremely playful, and the supremely delightful Lord. Now, these are represented actually in the Chaitanya tradition as the three primary deities of Vrindavan, of Braj: Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Govinda, and Radha Gopinath or Radha Gopijana Vallabha. They're interchangeable, the last two. So Radha Madan Mohan, the one who plays the flute and attracts all souls to his divine heart. This is Madan Mohan, one who is inexorably, moving souls toward himself and calling all souls, the all-attractive, supreme divine. And then Radha Govinda, the playful one, the supremely playful one, the one who plays with the cows and the cowherd boys. You can see them buried in all of the herd of cows there. And then, of course, Radha Gopinatha, the Lord of the Gopis, the Lord of the Vraja Gopikas, the cowherd maidens of Vraja, and this kind of divine romance that Krishna has with the Vraja Gopikas, and which we'll return to in a bit. So in Kirtan, the love of the divine comes through to humans. We celebrate the supremacy of divine love. The ultimate expression of love is a full revelation of a divine relation. So Kirtan, in some sense, celebrates the love that is taking place between divinity and goddess. And this especially takes place between the most favored Vraja Gopika, Radha, known as Radha. In Kirtan, the love of the divine comes through to humans. We celebrate the supremacy of divine love. In Kirtan, the supreme love between the divine feminine and the divine masculine as Radha and Krishna is celebrated. Yet between them, there is a divine yearning, a love call sent out for the love from humans. Now, I'd like to just go back to this image. Normally, anyone who's familiar with the Krishna Leelas and the more esoteric visions of Radha with Krishna and the great poetry that has been produced, very rich poetry that has been produced. Normally, when Krishna plays the flute, he's calling all souls to him, the Vrajagopikas. And his most dearly beloved Vrajagopika is Radha. Now, normally there would be no need for him to be playing the flute. He has everyone he wants. But here, Radha and Krishna, the famous sort of imagery of Radha and Krishna, where they are not gazing at one another. The internal gaze within divinity is not happening here, but the outward external gaze of divinity calling all souls to their divine hearts. So there's a difference between the internal gaze of divinity and the outward gaze of divinity. Together, Radha and Krishna. So this is the love call that's sent out to all humans. Kirtan is the loving response. So in Bhakti, we have in the Bhakti Sutra, having attained that purest love, prema, it is only the beloved one sees before one's eyes. It is only the beloved whom one hears. It is only the beloved about whom one speaks. It is only the beloved one contemplates. This is from my own translation of the Bhakti Sutra. That is, I won't even tell you how many years it's overdue for publication, but nevertheless, I draw from it. And we can go even to Vedanta to understand the power of shabda, the power of sound. And really, we can go behind the whole practice of kirtan to understand in the most basic sense that sound is the basis of it all. And in the Vedanta Sutra, this beautiful, very little phrase, and of course, pithy, aphoristic phrases are to be expected in a sutra text. And here, bhava shabdacha, devotional feeling within the heart, bhava, stirs on account of sacred sound, shabda, truly. And then the last very, very dramatic sutra text out of some, I think it's something like 550 aphorisms. It's very, as we know, the Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra or Badarayana Sutras. They're numerous. It's the largest sutra text I know of. The very last text has a repeated phrase, anavrati shabdat. Anavrati shabdat. There is no more turning within the cycle of worldly bondage, samsara, because of sacred sound, shabda. There is no more turning within the cycle of worldly bondage, samsara, because of sacred sound. So this is the grounding of kirtan. Kirtan is liberating because shabda, this is in some sense, the essence of shabda Brahman. Sound liberates us by playing us. Humans are instruments to be played by divine sound. Sound powerfully moves the heart by stimulating the psychoenergetic centers. Oops, that's just a repeat. Here we go. When a main string of a sitar is struck by the sitar's musician, its sounding note triggers related sympathetic strings that lie beneath it. So music that is performed triggers within us, the listeners, the various psychoenergetic centers, just as the sympathetic strings of a sitar are sounded in concert with what is being played. And here I talk about the sarangi. Sarangi is a similar instrument that has primary strings, and when it is bowed, the sarangi's musician is triggering related sympathetic strings. By the way, they're called tarabs, below the primary strings. We don't have any instruments like that in the West. This is unique to India. And it's very symbolic and representative of the way the ancient Indian mind was able to perceive this sense of resonance, sympathetic resonances with not only within the instrumentation of music, but between divinity and humanity. So here we have a sitar. Most of you, of course, have already known what a sitar is like, but just to remind you of all these sympathetic strings, these tarabs, and you can see that there are only about 4 primary strings. I believe it's 4 or 3, something like that, 4 or 3 strings. And these strings can be struck by the sitarist, but they're also there to resonate automatically along with the way the primary strings would invite that sound, that resonance. So when the 7 chakras in the human are being struck, as it were, we are in effect the scales, the musical scale. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni in the East, or do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti in the West. So we have these 7 tones, these 7 primary tones, which again get struck. And the bass tone, of course, would be resonating with the Muladhara chakra, and then the Swadhisthana chakra, the 2nd tone, the Manipuri chakra, the 3rd, and the Anahata chakra, the 4th, known as the subdominant. Now, I don't know how familiar my audience is here with technical musical terms, but the tonic is the bass tone from which a piece of music sort of moves. It's sort of the starting point or the foundational tone, whereas the 4th tone is called the subdominant or the perfect 4th. It's interesting that it's called the perfect 4th, for that is the heart chakra, the Anahata chakra. And then the Vishuddha chakra is the dominant, known also as the perfect 5th. So these are, this is the scale that we all have that gets played when we hear music. These psychoenergetic centers are moved. And this is why music is so powerful in the life of any human. Okay, so this is a little clever, if I may say so myself, where I've overlaid the sitar and it over the chakras, because when the sitar is played, in effect, we are secondary sympathetic strings to the primary sympathetic strings that are under the primary strings of the sitar. So, oops, we already have that. Let me see. Okay, there we go. So, sound liberates us by playing us. Humans are instruments to be played by sound. And so we've seen that with the psychoenergetic centers. Okay, let's see. We've already done that. Okay, so, those are repeated unnecessarily. Okay, now this is where I want to go. What I want to do is bring to your attention, because my sense about this course is that what does one experience in contemplation? There is a place in contemplation that is very peaceful, that is reposeful. And then there's a place in contemplation that is intensively reaching. But in no circumstance is the perfection of contemplation merely a passive act. There's always a kind of movement into repose or reaching. A state of repose, a state of reaching. Let me see if I go into this a little bit here. Notice the terms vairagya and abhyasa. These terms, I'm going to come back to this slide in a minute, because I want to also have all of us experience a piece of music once I equip all of you with these ideas and with these terms. Now, vairagya and abhyasa are spoken of in the Yoga Sutra. So in 112, Samadhipada, 12th aphorism, we have here, when one constantly practices or reaches for the pure turnings of the heart, abhyasa, when one dispassionately renounces the colored turnings of the heart, vairagya, that state consists of the uprooting and the taking root and flowering of nirodha. Now, so two things are happening here. There is the purification of the heart and the mind, while there is a flowering of both. So this surely is part of the contemplative experience of kirtan, but also the contemplative experience of dhyana yoga. Now, abhyasa is typically translated as practice, maybe constant practice, but the word morphologically actually means to reach. Abhi, over. So to sort of move over, to be reaching. And even an aphorism later on in the Samadhipada uses the word grahitra. The meditator is a grasper, someone who grasps or embraces. So this is a reaching. It is not passivity. It is a striving. It is a reaching that is being cultivated here. And also, then when we would see aphorism, Samadhipada, Sutra text 39, yatabi mata dhyanat va, when the divine being whom one loves and has longed for is realized in one's deepest meditative awareness, then one has achieved the fulfillment of divine grace. So there is this, again, this longing, this striving for one's ultimate object, one's ishta devata, a phrase found later on in the Yoga Sutra. So this vairagya and abhyasa is very powerful in the contemplative yogic and bhakti tradition both. Dispassion is really this sense of peacefulness and a sense of belonging. It's peaceful, it's tranquil, it's a sense of non-otherness. And yet, in love, one can never be close enough to the beloved. So in kirtan, there is this further reaching. There is a passion and a longing, and one can hear this in music. One can hear this in bhajan and kirtan. And so both are necessary components within kirtan and bhajan. Now, what I want to do before I venture further into the Ras Mandala discussion, what I want to do is I want to go back to this slide here and talk about how repose and reach, a state of reaching and a state of repose, are experienced in music and expressed in music. Typically, in the piece that we're going to listen to for 5 minutes, it starts off with a kind of very soothing repose, very tranquil, and it's using foundational tones, if you will. And, there's a serenity, a reposeful serenity that's beginning to stir. So one can feel this stirring. Now, in a minor key, if you are attuned to music and musical terms, a minor key can start off with feelings of longing and desiring right off the bat. But in a major key, which is what we're going to hear, it starts off with feelings of belonging and delight. And in fact, the singer here, the Kirtaniya, begins with the recitation of the Omkar. And so this is a very, very fulfilling mantra. Then intensification builds. Sometimes as there's an increase of tempo and repetitive lines. Sometimes there's greater embellishment and development of the melody line away from the starting tonic note. That's what you're going to hear in this piece, by the way. Not so much an increase in tempo, but you're going to hear an embellishment. These are different ways that reaching, this kind of stirring of reaching is expressed. And then there's a climactic moment that's reached as most intensive expression of longing or belonging is expressed. Then there's returning to a reposeful serenity by slowing the tempo down. Typically in kirtans, in this bhajan that we're about to hear, it's returning to simpler melody and becoming a little softer. And then final lines with a reposeful serenity often is expressed with a sense of embracing this longing and desiring, or with a sense of embracing the belonging and desiring. So it's sort of a bell curve. It begins with a kind of repose, and then a stirring, and then an increasing reaching, and a kind of pitch is reached, and then it goes down either through less intensity, calmer, not as high-pitched tones that are reached, or a slower tempo. The climbing up of the bell curve is maybe an increase of tempo, typically found in kirtan, but there is a kind of slowing down or a less intensive expression, melodic expression, and then it comes back down to the bass tone. Okay, so I hope that everyone can hear this. This is a modern Western singer with even computerized background tones. So this is a very, sort of modern expression. But I want all of you to hear this and pay attention to the reposeful serenity or the intensive reaching that also is nuanced throughout the reposeful parts and the reaching, the intensive reaching. So there are little bits and pieces throughout. This Kirtaniya, Jayutal, he's not really repeating any mantra as such. Om is at the beginning. I think sometimes you're going to hear something like Radha, okay, or Ram even, and it's very abstract. And so the long vowels, we have something to say about that toward the end of the talk. But the long vowels in Sanskrit tend to be reaching, and the short vowels tend to be reposeful. So laghu, light syllables, and guru syllables tend to be reaching. Okay, so we can even be that nuanced, and we'll talk more about that when we come back. But let me start and play this piece, and I hope, Pravina, you can let me know in the chat if there's a problem in hearing it. Let me see here. Okay, but I'm going to start by playing it. So, quite an expressive piece that really highlights this longing and calling out. Quite beautiful. And it illustrates this reposeful serenity coupled with this intensive reaching. And then even within each, there are nuanced couplets of intensive reaching and reposefulness. So this is a very complex pattern of tranquility and felicity, and the way they work together in such nuanced ways, like a Sri yantra that has so many interlocking triangles, upward facing and downward facing triangles interlocking, and they seem to be very, very nuanced. So moving along here then, and to wind things up, and then to open up for discussion. In my book, Dance of Divine Love, published years ago, of course, there is the famous Ras Lila, the Rasa Panchadhyayi, the famous five chapters of the Ras Lila, and which I loosely translate as Dance of Divine Love. But that's not just an exotic or attractive title. Dance is exactly what I'm talking about. It's a dance between this reposefulness and this state of reaching. It's a constant dance between the two. And this is it's that achintya that I originally spoke of, an achintya beda. The achintya is not just saying it is, it is not something that you can comprehend or think about, but it itself has a referent, the achintya shakti. It's this shakti of the dance between the beda and the abheda. It's this experience in which the bhakta is lifted up into this kind of dance that ever keeps the heart so full and overflowing with prema. So, as all of you know, these five chapters have a storyline, and I've gone into this in great depth in the book and so on, and some of you have even heard me speak of it in other lectures or classes. But the important point I want to offer here is that I have outlined 9 attributes of the intensity of love that is illustrated in the behaviors of the Vraja Gopikas, the greatest exponents, the greatest exemplars of bhakti, according to the Bhakti Sutra. Aphorisms 21 through 24 in the Bhakti Sutra. Now, awakening, anticipating, meeting, conflict, separation, and so on. So these are all, attributes of love: awakening to love, anticipating the beloved, meeting the beloved, conflict between lovers, separation from the beloved, loss and devastation in love, reuniting with the beloved, rejoicing in love with the beloved, returning to the place of awakening. So these, of course, I've outlined in the different acts and scenes, which are not important for our discussion here. But what I want to point out to you, carrying forward this theme of longing and belonging, or reaching and reposefulness, I want to put these 9 features of love in a kind of circuitous pattern here, because that's what happens in the lila, because the lila is occurring over and over and over eternally. And so I've added how longing And these phases can be seen as phases of longing, belonging, and then going back to a phase of longing, and viraha, and so on, vipralambaseva, et cetera. We don't have time to go into the sort of depths of the bhakti philosophy, but then belonging and longing. So this is the dance between longing and belonging, or the reachfulness, or state of reaching, and then reposefulness, and then reaching, and so on. And this is seen. This is really demonstrated beautifully in my recently commissioned painting that I worked with artist Kim Waters in putting together. And this dance, the ultimate, the sort of climactic portion of the Ras Mandala, of the Ras Lila, is the Ras Mandala, when the Vrajagopikas join arms, they link arms together. And this represents this kind of belonging and repose and sweetness between the Vrajagopikas. They are so sweet together, and they join arms together, and Krishna's in the middle, and Krishna then duplicates himself multiple times to attend each of the Vrajagopikas exclusively. So first there's this sense of reposeful and sweet inclusivity, and then there is this intensity of exclusivity that is there with Krishna, who duplicates himself multiple times to attend each of the Vrajagopikas. And this is where they are each reaching for Krishna, because they can never get enough of the beloved. A lover can never be close enough to the beloved. And this Leela expresses this very intensively. And so what I've done here with the Maha Mantra, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is a mantra that's so unusual, because it's unusual in its repetitions. It's unusual in its kind of patterned dance form. It's unusual in that all the names of divinity are in the vocative case, and which is in the total spirit of kirtan. And so there is this kind of calling out, and in some sense, the Ras Mandala is being resonant, or is resonant within and replicated by this sonic repetition of the Maha Mantra. And even the mandala becomes a kind of yantra, if you will. I don't know how well you can see this. I hope you can see it all right, but I've overlaid the Sri Yantra over the figures to show how the Ras Mandala, in effect, is a kind of yantra, a bhakti yantra itself. And here I even try to show it a little bit more, and how Radha Krishna in the center really emanates the various outlying couples of Krishnas with the Vrajagopikas in the periphery. So this Maha Mantra becomes really a circuitous pattern, as you've seen. And in some sense, even within the names of the mantra, you have laghu and guru syllables, short and long, or long and short. And it's no mistake that the feminine, the divine feminine, represented by Hara, is first laghu, reposeful, but then guru, calling out, reaching. And then Krishna has guru and then laghu. So you see, even laghu, guru, guru, laghu. You see? So even, Hare Krishna. You see? And then the same with the second part of the mantra, Hare Rama. You see? So it starts with laghu, ends with laghu. The intensity is in the middle. This is kirtan. So it's present right there in the Maha Mantra. So I want to just finish by saying that kirtan, the contemplative experience, either within dhyana for the bhakta or within kirtan dhyana, is this tension between reposefulness, the state of reaching, of vairagya, and abhyasa, viyoga, or yoga and viyoga, and vipralamba seva and sambhoga. And these patterns are just there everywhere. And I think and then of course in the ultimate Vedantic vision of the Chaitanya school, achintya beda beda, the achintya is the contribution, because Bhaskara came out with beda beda years before, and Nimbarka came out with dvaita dvaita in the 14th century. So nothing new there, beda beda, dvaita dvaita. What is new is the achintya, and the achintya shakti, that is the simultaneously experienced dance of the longing and the belonging. So once again, I appreciate this opportunity to speak on this topic of contemplative arts and aesthetics of yoga. This is a project that is dear to my heart, the theme of this project. And what I appreciate about this opportunity today is it's allowed me to revisit some of the themes that I've been looking at for many years, and to look at them anew and consider them for today's presentation. So thank you, Dr. Pravina Rodriguez and Dr. Rita Sharma. Thank you.